Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you to New Leaders Foundation and the Triple D dashboard for giving me this opportunity once again to share best practice from my experience as an assessment facilitator in the intermediate phase at Sedibeng East District. I'm glad that we shared that this is just best practice, but you'll notice that certain things that I'm going to talk about is policy driven. And as officials at school level, district level, and provincial level, it's important for us, especially in assessment, to understand these policies when we are trying to implement. So today's session is basically made up of two learning objectives. The first one is to identify the initial learners at risk at the beginning of an academic year. We are now currently in term 1 of 2022. So who are our learners at risk at the beginning of 2022, before a teacher can even set foot in his or her classroom to conduct that very first lesson of the year? We need to know that they are learners, or the possibility is that they are learners at risk already seated in front of you. And then once you've identified those learners, learning objective number 2 is to plan for them and monitor the implementation of intervention strategies during term 1. So, colleagues, most of what I'm going to speak about, it's nothing new, but for some it might be a refresher. In other cases, it might be some kind of motivation to get you going because you're lacking that motivation to actually plan. It's important to plan before we try to execute any intervention strategies. So in identifying those learners, we know that if the original challenge that is identified, if that challenge is not accurate, it means all our further plans in terms of subject improvement plans, individual support plans, and the implementation thereof is going to be a fruitless activity. Because the important thing is to, number 1, identify those learners, and number 2, identify the exact challenge that we are experiencing with those learners in whatever subject or combinations of subjects they may not be meeting the minimum requirements in. Okay, so who are our initial learners at risk? Now we're going to use this year and last year as an example. Remember, at the end of last year, we had submitted as schools our year-end promotion schedules to district officers, to the DAT. And in turn, the DAT has compiled their results analysis and submitted it to province, who then submits it to national. In that whole process, there were learners that did not meet the current promotion requirements in either foundation, intermediate, senior, or the FET band. Those learners are going to repeat, or should be currently repeating, the grade in 2022. Those are the first learners that should be identified as learners at risk. I see there's someone saying that there's no sound. Am I audible, colleagues?
If the person is saying they have no sound, they'd have to adjust their own equipment. From outside, coming loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Okay, so those are the first group of learners that are deemed to be identified as learners at risk. The second type of learners or category of learners that should be identified as learners at risk are your progress learners, your PG learners of 2021. Now, in terms of progress, they can be progress due to a variety of reasons. They can be progress due to number of years in the grade, maximum number of years in the phase, age cohort, and National Assessment Circular 3 of 2021 that was released by DBE. If a learner is deemed to be progress due to that circular, whether they were adjusted in one or a combination of 3 subjects by 5%, or whether they were adjusted and condoned in mathematics, or whether they were condoned in mathematics, they are progressed. So they are learners at risk. And that circular applies to all districts across all provinces. The third group of learners at risk are the newly admitted learners during any time during the course of term 1. So if a learner is newly admitted to a school during week 2, week 5, or even in this week of term 1, they should be identified as learners at risk. Now, what's important here is we need to understand as education specialists, it doesn't matter whether you're at the school level or a provincial level. Even though we may be following national policies, even though we may be following provincial policies, circulars, guidelines, our schools, our teachers, our learners, they are not the same. The standards may differ. The quality of teaching and learning and assessment practices at one school can be different to that of another school. Even though we are all following the same assessment policies, we are still following the same recovery ATPs 2021 to 2023. So it doesn't mean that if a learner comes to your school with level 7s indicated on his or her report card, that learner is actually going to maintain their academic strength and capabilities at your school. So that learner needs to be identified as a learner at risk. And through the engagement of informal activities, assessment for learning, and your formal assessment tasks, it will be then identified that this learner may have challenges in a particular subject, or actually has challenges within a subject in terms of the content taught. So that learner needs to be identified as a learner at risk and should be then deemed so up until the end of the year, when he or she proves that he or she is capable of meeting the minimum requirements of that particular grade in that particular school. Remember also why we are saying this, particularly in the GET band. Foundation phase, learners have an SBA of 100%. They don't write school-based control tests, which replaced examinations. In the InterSen, your SBA mark is made up of 80% of the final year's promotion mark, and only 20% is that of the school-based control test, the examination at the end of the year. So anything can happen between term 1 and term 3. A learner can do well in term 1. He comes with that report card. But what about term 2 and or term 3? What's to say he or she is not going to experience any challenges when he or she sits for that school-based control test Remember, some of these learners are sitting for the very first time under such conditions. Take, for example, your grade 4 learners. Take, for example, your grade 8 learners that are sitting in a high school, a new institution that they only have 6 months to get used to before they sit down for a formal seated school-based control test or examination in inverted commas. So it's important that, colleagues, we identify these three as the initial learners at risk come the beginning of an academic year. Now, I said before the teacher even starts teaching the first lesson of the year, he or she should know who these learners are, particularly the NP and PG learners. And they should have already have a plan to support those learners. We cannot support learners without a formal plan. And what is that plan? That plan is in the form of an ISP, an individual support plan. That plan, which is learner specific, should be compiled in collaboration with the outgoing teacher or combination of teachers, together with the incoming teachers or teacher, depending on the subjects that the learner may have challenges with. Now we know that these learners might know policy better than us. They know that ours progressed. I'm repeating, no matter what happens during the course of 2022, I'm going to still progress to the next grade if they are still falling within the same phase. But it doesn't mean that as teachers, as education specialists across, that we need to give up on those learners. We need to ensure that we support those learners so that they can pass on their own merits. And that gratitude at the end of the year, that feeling, knowing that you have assisted that learner, it is the best feeling in the world. So colleagues, the teachers from the previous grade and the new grade, depending on the subject that the learners are not meeting the requirements in or are struggling in, need to develop this individual support plan where they identify the gaps that was experienced by the learner in the previous year. Now, we are not robots. We are human beings. For Trishen, there might be 10 challenges in one subject that he experiences or has experienced in 2021. Now, it's almost impossible to maybe assist Trishen with those 10 challenges, but as teachers coming together in that collaboration, we can prioritize those challenges and try to tackle them in order of that priority. So even in identifying challenges for Trishen, there needs to be intervention plans. If he is having a problem with mathematics and the topic specifically is division, in order to support him, there will be intervention strategies and plans. Now, for each challenge, there might be more than one intervention strategy. There can be 20. But even there, we need to, in that collaboration, we need to prioritize the strategies that we're trying or we would like to implement in order to support that particular learner. And then we need to understand that this individual support plan, this ISP, it is a working document. So the idea is, number one, it's not just a paper trail or done for the sake of it being done, because we know that an ISP needs to be drafted as per policy. So The idea is that when Trishen moves from term 1 to term 4 in 2022, he needs to reduce the number of challenges that he's experienced in the previous year in that particular subject, and maybe even more in depth in that particular topic, being division. And by the end of the year, there needs to be evidence of progress by him as the learner and by the teacher in the execution of those interventions. Now, what's also important is that because it's a working document, we know that if we try to implement a specific intervention, it might not work for Trishen. It might work for another learner. So being a working document, we need to adjust and replan in terms of the intervention strategies that we are going to try to implement to try and close that academic gap that he is experiencing. What's important to note is that if, for example, he is experiencing a problem in division, and your intervention that's stated on the ISP is extra classes, what does that mean? Does it mean that Mr. Musa, who is his maths teacher, is going to then give him extra classes? Whether it's during the course of the day, which is highly improbable, or at the end of the day. Is that going to work? He never understood Mr. Musa during the lesson. What makes you think that Trishen is going to understand Mr. Musa come the extra class? There needs to be some type of variable change. If you tell me that you're going to replace the current maths teacher with Mr. Ike, who is teaching mathematics, he's a math specialist in the same school, but teaching another grade, then maybe we are trying to increase the chance or the probability that Trishen might understand the other teacher. Then I would tell you that that intervention strategy makes sense. There needs to be a link between the identified challenge and the intervention strategy that you're trying to implement. That is extremely, extremely important to note. With that also, it's important to have evidence of your intervention strategies. The HOD, if they are monitoring the teacher, they need to monitor the progress of the learner, but they also need to monitor the implementation of those strategies by the teacher. So there needs to be evidence of that intervention strategy. In the example that I used, is there an attendance register for this external or additional classes? Is there a separate workbook? Is there evidence of interaction between Mr. Ike and Trishen? Is there evidence of all those additional activities, teaching and learning activities and informal tasks? Is there evidence of feedback given to the learner? Is there evidence of an interaction where that additional class teacher is actually showing the learner that this question is actually done wrong, and here is how you do it, or here is an alternative way of answering the question? There must always be documented evidence of the intervention strategies that you are implementing at school level, because it has to be monitored by the HOD, and it is monitored by subject facilitators, assessment facilitators at district and provincial level. That's the first plan. Remember, an ISP is a plan, colleagues. You cannot implement anything without a plan. So a lot of people see it as extra work. Meanwhile, it's not extra work. It is planning to implement those strategies in order to try and support that learner. Now, the second plan that you need to compile as an educator is your subject improvement plan. Now, there might be educators, even in this as attendees, saying to oneself, but my subject, I have a 95% pass rate. I have a 70% average. My question is, why don't you then get 100% pass rate? Why is your average only 70%? Why is it not higher? Remember, as educators, we have subject targets at school level, at district level, at provincial level, at national level. And we want to meet those targets in terms of the pass percentage, as well as the subject average. But we need to understand that we are not chasing quantity only. We are chasing quality. So even if you have 95% as an pass percentage, are you really happy with the quality of that pass being 70%? And it's important to note that when we draft subject improvement plans, we need to know that we drafting these plans per subject, per grade. So Mr. Maraj cannot say I'm teaching grade 4 maths and grade 6 maths and then develop or compose one subject improvement plan, because those are two separate subjects in separate grades with different learners seated in front of you, as well as the content. Now, the content may be similar, but the depth of the work taught is different. So Mr. Maraj needs to then compile two separate subject improvement plans. And it's for all subjects. Whether you are underperforming as an educator in your subject, whether you are doing very well with a 95% pass percentage and a 70% average, the question you need to ask is, am I meeting national targets with respect to my subject? Am I meeting provincial and district targets? And am I, as an educator, meeting school targets? Because as a teacher, do you track your trend in your subject, particularly over the course of 3 years, especially if you are teaching in the education fraternity for many years? You're teaching that subject in that grade. Have you sat down and tracked your performance to see if you are improving, to see if you are declining, or to see if you have that fluctuation of an increase and decrease over the years? It's important to do this, and it forms part of your subject improvement plan. As you, as a teacher, you identify that you are maybe underperforming or you are not performing to set targets. Your intervention is then to go and track your performance as an educator in that subject for the past 3 to 5 years. And that will guide you in then trying to implement any intervention that you want to, as a teacher, improve in yourself, and try and take that to the classroom, to your planning for your lessons, to your teaching and learning activities, and even to your assessment that you are going to set up for these learners. Because remember, it's assessment for learning. It's not assessment of learning. And it's school-based control test because you are responsible to assess what you have covered as a teacher during the course of the term, especially now during these 3 years. I'm calling it the COVID years. So, colleagues, it's important that the HOD monitors the progress of the learner based on the subject improvement plan as well. And that HOD needs to monitor the teacher to see if he or she has planned accordingly and is executing the interventions that are indicated on the plan. You don't have a backbone to stand on if you say, I'm implementing 1, 2, 3. Based on what, colleagues? It's based on your plan. That's why we plan. So again, it's not extra work. It is something that is expected of us as per policy. And let me tell you from experience, if you really plan and plan correctly by identifying those challenges, whether it's an ISP in terms of the learner, or whether it's a subject improvement plan to evaluate or reevaluate yourself, then colleagues, that is something that you are working from. And again, it's also a working document to show that you have progressed as an educator in that subject throughout the course of the term or throughout the course of the year. Now, we support learners from the beginning of the year. And it's these identified learners that we are speaking of. It's the NP and PG learners of 2021, and it's the newly admitted learners during the course of term 1, 2022. These plans are working documents. So once you have new learners, you need to retweak your plan. Colleagues, we need to collaborate as subject specialists within our schools to share the good practice amongst each other during subject meetings, to try and close gaps or identify future trends that we predict and close those challenges now before we experience them. So even in developing, for example, your subject improvement plan, you need to ask yourself the question, am I the right person teaching this, the right subject in the correct grade? Am I a subject specialist? In evaluating myself and checking my analysis trends over the last 3 to 5 years, am I really doing justice to the subject? Am I really doing justice to these learners? Or am I going to advise school SMTs to relook into your subject allocation? We have, and we know we are experiencing this, we have people that are teaching subjects or teaching the right subjects but in wrong grades because it's a wrong allocation of subjects. So what's important is to relook into the allocation of subjects. Core subjects, yes, they are the most important. Subject specialists need to be there in terms of their qualifications, in terms of their expertise and experience. And then we know when we try to fill up a timetable, we then tend to here and there not do justice in terms of getting the right people in the right place. But even with that, these ISPs, especially the subject improvement plans, will guide us as educators to try and improve on that subject, even if you're not a specialist in that subject. It will guide you. So basically, what have we done today? We've identified 3 categories of learners at risk as of now. In fact, as of the beginning of 2022. The NP learners of 2021, the PG learners for whatever reason in 2021, and the newly admitted learners that come to your school during the course of term 1. Remember, especially during this COVID, I'm calling it an experience, there's already learning gaps that learners have missed out on during the times that schools were closed. And now with the recovery ATPs and the reduced curriculum, those learners that never meet the requirements or were progressed are coming with even more academic gaps. What about those learners that actually do well, colleagues? Are we focusing too much on the NP and PG learners, on the at-risk learners? We need to also focus on the learners that are doing well so that they can achieve better, or we give them a chance and an opportunity to achieve better. And those subject improvement plans in trying to improve your subject average and your pass percentage is going to then do that. It's going to allow you to support all learners in your class, not just the at-risk learners. So remember, even those learners that are getting level 7s and 80s and 90%, they still come with academic gaps because of our experience over the last few years. So take that into consideration when you are developing, more in particularly, your subject improvement plan. With that, Ike and Musa, I think that's all from my side for today's session. I hope that I've left a mark somewhere in terms of identifying initial learners at risk and providing support. But before providing that support, planning to provide that support and keeping evidence of implementation is very, very important. Thank you, sirs. With that, I'm going to now mute my mic.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Trishen. From my side, it really sounded like really helpful advice that we are talking to. But of course, there's a great chance that there's someone who walked into the session with certain expectations about what's going to be covered. Maybe those expectations have been met, maybe they haven't. But colleagues, at this time, we do want to allow for us as colleagues to speak to Trishen. It's a very unique situation, it's a very unique opportunity for us to speak to someone who knows a thing or two about how we can plan to identify learners at risk and improve our subjects. So I do want to encourage courage in the room and for us to really raise our hands up at this point, or even speak to the chat and ask questions about your situation, about what you're needing assistance with, what you didn't get, so we can speak directly to the subject matter expert about the issues you're having. So at this moment, if you were to raise your hand, we'll be able to find you, and then we'll be able to ask you, you'll be able to talk to us directly about any questions that you might have. But while the colleagues are finding their microphones, IK, were there any questions that were coming up that you think we can speak to at this moment? IK?
Oh, all right. Thank you so much, Musa. I think to me, I'm actually busy, taking a whole lot in that Trishen is saying. A whole lot of things that he's saying are revealing to me. Like when he talked about, assuming every learner that comes into the school during the period of term 1, maybe 1 week, 3 weeks, as learners at risk. I haven't really thought about that, but it's, it is true. Because these learners are coming from a different atmosphere, a different way of teaching to a new school. And we expect, so it's a whole lot of things that I'm taking in, and I hope a whole lot of people are actually having questions, because I have my own questions. But before I go there, I just want to speak to 2 questions that just came. I heard people asking of the new patch, SSM's patch, and people talking about the attendance register. I'll quickly answer that, Musa, because I see that some people are also raising their hands up. Colleagues, please know that the new patch is being tested, right? We are not an authorized unit to communicate on the release of the new patch, but please be rest assured that communication will be sent to each and every one, and also it will be uploaded to Tuton. So know that the patch is currently being tested, and that definitely be communicated when it's out. Secondly is the attendance register. Please note that, as I said towards the beginning of this session, that the pack will be sent to people that will be pre-registered for the session. That is, if you have registered and the link is being sent to you, you will receive the attendance register, the link to this recording, and last but not the least, what we have put together for the session. Thank you so much, Musa, as I cut back to you.
Wonderful, thanks, IK. There is a colleague who's got their hand up, Amukelani Chauke. I have given you permission to speak. If you could please kindly unmute yourself and voice your question.
Afternoon, sir.
Afternoon, sir. Thank you.
I heard you talking about learners admitted during term 1 regarded as learners at risk. So I'm having learners here in my school. I'm a social worker myself here in Midrand High. So those learners, they are not doing well. They cannot write properly, they cannot read and understand what they are doing. And then it is the educators are finding it very, very difficult to assist them, and they are repeating their grades now. So according to what you said of having a plenary for an individual, how best can I assist such kind of learners? Do I have to communicate with their former schools? Parents I've tried, but they are forever busy. So what best can I do to assist those learners as a social worker here at school?
Thank you, Amakelani. Very good question there, Trishen. Critical gaps in reading and writing. What is a school to do with 5 years, maybe even 10 years of gaps that they encounter?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to tackle that question. The first thing that I would ask is, has the learner come to the new school with the learner profile? Have you requested the learner profile from the previous school? Remember, the learner profile gives us a lot of information. Maybe that learner is an LSEN learner and we don't even know. Now, such information can be accessed in that learner profile. If not, it's important to get a hold of the school and request a conversation with the teachers. Obviously, if the learner is admitted to your school, you should have a report card in front of you. But I did say that the quality might not be to your standard at your school. So what do you need to do? Depending on the subject as well, or the grade that the learner is admitted in, it's important to conduct a baseline assessment. Just a general assessment of that particular subject with content of the previous year's work, as well as a little bit of content of term 1. And that will give you a guide as to where the learner might be experiencing gaps, particularly in specific topics. And taking that into consideration, analyzing the results of that learner or a combination of learners, you then can develop your ISPs and your subject improvement plan as an educator. But more in particular with this question, your ISP for that learner, to say, based on my analysis of that baseline assessment, this is the challenges that I have identified. And as an educator, this is my interventions that I'm going to plan and try to execute during the course of term 1 and moving forward throughout the year. Thank you.
Thanks, Trishen, for that response. And also, colleagues, what I do want to say, of course, as Trishen has said, one of the things we want to do is to collaborate. Maybe you are here and you are in a school where you face such challenges and you've developed a plan that you have found to be successful and effective. I would like to also hear from you to raise your hand some of those experiences of what you are able to do with learners with sometimes critical learning gaps. Thanks for that question, Amukelani. I hope you are assisted. I'm now going to attempt to connect to Anele Mdluli, a very familiar name here in the webinar. Anele, if you could just unmute yourself and please pose your question. Anele, you've definitely unmuted yourself, but no sound is coming through. Just ensure maybe that you don't have an earphone in your or Bluetooth headset or any other thing connected, because you are unmuted, but we're not hearing anything. But while Anele finds their mic, there is another question coming in here from an anonymous attendee, and it says, can one use SPIP activities for learners who are only for these learners or for learners or only for these learners at risk? A question there about the SPIP. Is it just for learners at risk, Trishen, or we can use it for all the learners that we are seeing?
Okay, in answering that, you can use it for all learners. Remember, sometimes we get sidetracked, like I said, in terms of supporting learners at risk. And in supporting learners at risk, we find that we are not progressing as an educator in the subject over the course of maybe 3 to 5 years. It's because we are spending so much of time planning for those learners at risk that we are forgetting about the learners that are doing well or even average in the classroom. So your subject improvement plan will holistically take into consideration your entire class or grade in that particular subject. So it will be used to improve the academic capabilities of all learners. It doesn't matter whether they're at risk, an average learner, or an excellent learner in your class. So it can be implemented to all. Thank you.
Yes, I was wondering how long it's going to happen for me to speak while I'm on mute. Thank you for that response, Trishen. Let me now also again try to cut to Anele. Anele, are you winning with your mic? You are definitely unmuted. Speak to it. Let's see if we can hear you. All right, unfortunately not being able to hear Anele there. Perhaps maybe if you can pose your question in writing in the question and answer chat, but we will keep you open. If a sound comes in, we'll cut right to you. I think I'm starting to hear something. Anele, are you there?
I think, Musa, also while we're waiting for Anele, there are a couple of questions on the chat box. So I'm just going to read them while we're actually trying to wait for Anele. There's one from Logan. Logan said, this is a comment. He says, thanks, Trishen. I've never considered putting new learners on the learners at risk list, but it makes so much sense. Thank you so much. Carmen says, okay, I think Carmen has been answered, but Carmen says, good day, Trishen. Is there a place on SSMs that we can go and find a breakdown of the learners at risk other than the schedule?
Maybe if I can jump into that question as well.
Please go ahead.
Trishen attends to it. Also, ladies and gentlemen, remember that we do have the DDD dashboard, of which this is the platform for. A lot of the identification can be done there. I'm sure Trishen can also add to his experience here as how the dashboard can assist. But also, if you want to encourage you to continue attending these webinars, we're not able to cover everything in one session, even if the session was 4 hours. Trust me, we have tried when we used to see people live. So I would recommend that you make it a point to attend these sessions on a weekly basis. That will allow you to increase your knowledge over time on some of the analysis that's possible on the dashboard. But let me cut to Trishen and his experience on how to answer this question.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. I think it's important. The collaboration between SAMS and the Triple D is important. Colleagues, the first part, to identify your 2021 NP and PG learners. If you are in the foundation phase, you go to module 12.9.15.1. And if you select the codes PG and NP, the list of those learners will automatically appear with their marks of all subjects. If you are in the InterSen, you go to module 12.9.15.3, and it will give you the exact same information as in the foundation phase. It's just two different modules for foundation phase and then the InterSen. To link that to the Triple D, remember there are different reports on the Triple D that you can access. Some of them are the school achievement report, the subject achievement report, the promotion statistics report, and the subject year-on-year comparison report. Now, in using SAMS and the Triple D with those modules and those sections, it will also assist you in compiling your subject improvement plan, because you now see the data per subject, per grade at your particular school. So that's how we can link SAMS and the Triple D to assist you in compiling your plans before you even execute them. Thank you, colleagues.
Thanks, Trishen. Very, very clear. Trishen even went directly to the modules and also the reports on Triple D that can assist. Also, bear in mind, colleagues, as part of the pack that we are going to send, we're also going to be adding these questions along with their responses so that you can refer to those when we do send them to you in 48 hours or rather 2 business days. The links to this recording and, of course, the content. A follow-up question here from Amokelani Chauke. Again, Trishen, I don't know if this makes sense to you, but I'll just read it as I have it. Is it also advisable to use the accommodation tools for learner at risk? Are you comprehending this question, Trishen?
I just want to be more. I wanted to be more specific when she says accommodation tool. Is she speaking about the SNAR forms? If she can maybe unmute and be more specific so that I can answer her accordingly.
Yes, I think Amukelani, let me try and connect you again. Sir, if you're still able to talk to us, if you could just clarify further on that question. What do you mean by accommodation tools?
I'm talking about the SNA tools, the SNA forms, the one I received from the district. Yeah, so my question is based on those forms. Is it also advisable to use them for the learners at risk? Thank you.
Thanks, Amukelani.
Okay, can I answer that, Musa?
Yes, please, sir.
Remember, SNAR forms, let's take it one by one. SNAR 1 is compiled by the educator. And the very first question there is the challenge that is identified. In your ISP, what is the first thing that you check? You check the challenge that is experienced by the learner. So that's a link. You can use your SNAR form as a type of ISP because it will guide you in terms of the strategies that you're going to try and implement to assist that learner, because the SNAR form is compiled by identifying the challenge that you're experiencing with that learner. And it also allows for the interventions that you are wishing to implement to try and support that learner. If a learner, you get that experience where you support and you support and you support to a point where you can support no more. Then if you are using the SNAR form, you've already started the process of SNAR, where that learner is then referred to your SBST. And that's when the SBST completes the SNAR 2, where the HODs and the SBST actually monitor the interventions that were planned by the educator to close those gaps that the educator has indicated on the SNAR 1 form. And then furthermore, SNAR 3 is completed by your DBST component. So yes, you can use it as a type of an ISP, especially for learners that are consistently not improving, irrespective of how many times you may adapt your interventions or reintroduce new intervention strategies to that particular learner. I hope I've helped in some way in answering that question, colleagues.
Wonderful. Thanks for that response, Trishen. I hope you assisted there, Mukelani. Definitely a clear link between the SNA and what we are talking about here today, where you initially identify your learners at risk. Ladies and gentlemen, I have now launched the polls. This is just our way to find out whether or not the session met your expectations. If we take some time right now to go through that, very simple to answer. It's a rating of 3 levels that just allows us to see exactly how you experience the session. If you could just take care of that with the few remaining minutes that we have. It seems we are unable to connect with NLM Zuli, but I am hearing some noise coming through. I don't know whether it's from them.
I think it's from you.
Or is it from you? I'm gonna have to.
I think it's from me.
Or is it from you? Okay, all
yes.
right. Unfortunately, you are unable to connect, but please, if you can pose your responses in the question and answer, I'll take care of it. Over to you, Ike.
Cool. Thank you so much, Musa. I just want to take this time to just concentrate on the chat. There's a whole lot of influx of comments coming into the chat. So let me just concentrate on the chat and just read some of these. And a whole lot of them are asking for solutions. So they have heard about, how do we identify? They are saying that, like one said, can this session be please followed up with intervention strategies? Can we have interventions? The other one went, this is a cry of help. And this person said, hi, my school underperformed in the last 2 years, where in 2020, we got 47.7 and last year, 55% in grade 12. I really need to move out of this underperforming thing. Please assist. And they gave their email. So there's a cry for intervention strategies. And I don't know, I'm just going to pause a bit before I go on to just allow Trishen just speak to this, then I'll cut back to the chat. Trishen?
Okay, in answering that question, my advice would be, number one, are the teachers teaching matric, are they the specialists in that subject? If they are, or if they are not, we need to relook into our subject allocation. If they are, we need to check our trends over the last couple of years, colleagues, and we need to maybe adjust and reallocate subjects and teachers to subjects, paying particular attention to, I know in matric they have the baskets that they try to achieve. Try to allocate your teachers in terms of the priorities of that achievement basket, so that in that way, you are already looking at yourself before you are looking at the learners. Then we spoke about it, the collaboration between the grade 11 teachers and the grade 12 teachers. A lot of learners are progressed from grade 11 to grade 12, especially over the last 2 years. Now, those learners are coming with an even bigger gap. So it's important that we collaborate with those teachers in subjects that are of priority. We need to prioritize the subjects. And those collaborations will then allow us to develop subject improvement plans. And those subject improvement plans need to be implemented in terms of priority as well, because the year is only so long. And we might not be able to close all gaps in all subjects or by administering all interventions that we might think of. My other idea is this. Colleagues, we are our own best resource. So if you can't, within the school, within a department, decide on your subject improvement plan, maybe it's time we try to collaborate with a school nearby us, especially if we know that they are a performing school. Let us try and see how we can best get their best practices. How are they performing? Why are they performing better in subjects? Let us take those practices and try and implement it at our school. Sometimes we've got to work out of the box. You know, we are not in education for the money. We are in education for the passion for the learners. And at the end of the day, this question tells me that this person really wants to improve and doesn't want to fall as an underperforming school. And you will, sir, you will. Let's think out of the box. Let's try and maybe take our feet to the next school next door and see if we can get help there. And remember, it's always also important to collaborate with your subject advisors at your district office. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trishen. I think there's also a line here that is also being added by Loshi Naidu. She's saying, refer to the pre-referral intervention manual. The pre-referral intervention manual that was issued by the DOE to every school. It's very useful and a practical guide to intervention strategies to specific learner challenges. I also like that very much over and above what Trishen has added. Looking at the time, ladies and gentlemen, a session like this can very easily go on the entire day. We know that we haven't covered all of the questions that are here, but we do want to make you aware that Trishen will be returning at least one more time to further expand on this discussion. And also, ladies and gentlemen, you can also go to our YouTube page. I'll put the link shortly in the chat there to see the last time Trishen spoke to us. I think a lot of the things that he said then are still very much applicable now. So please, you can also go to that and see if that assists. Unfortunately, because of time and the scope of this meeting, we are going to have to move for a closure at this moment. So I'll pass on to Trishen for some final words, then to IK, and then we will close the session. Trishen?
Thanks, Musa and IK. I just want to say from my side, I'm really honored to be given this opportunity to share good practices with South Africa. So it's important for the attendees to also note that we also want to learn from them, like how Ma'am Naidu has just indicated. in terms of answering the one question with the pre-referral intervention manual issued by the DOE. We are here to, it's a platform for us to learn from one another, so that we improve on our teaching and learning and assessment practices, so that at the end of the day, all that we do is for the African child. And that's why we're here. So from my side, thank you very, very much for the opportunity. And I hope that at least if the attendees took one thing out of today, I'm happy.
Thank you so much, Trishen. Musa, can you go to the last slide? I just want to speak to that. Colleagues, thank you so much. Also, just to answer a quick question from Anele with respect to access. She says they're having difficulties with access. Anele, please just pop the help desk and an email. Just pop them with your request. Our friendly colleagues are there. They will definitely assist you with the access. Also, I saw a good collaboration happening in the chat box where people are asking questions and colleagues are also answering them. You know, I could see that between Bridget and some other person. So those are the collaborations that we actually want. Thank you so much. Colleagues, as Musa said, you know, we can never cover this 100% because we are limited with one time. But please make out time to join us again. Trishen is going to honor us with his presence and his time tomorrow again. We're still going to be repeating what we actually spoke today. So if you feel, because I heard some people said they came late and they are asking if they can, rate the session, you can please rate the session. If you still have time tomorrow, Trishen is going to be speaking about this again tomorrow. So please join so you can also get. Alternatively, I see people asking for Trishen to go back to what he has said. That is where the recording is. Please, listen to the recording, please, as much as possible for you to be able to get. Thank you so much. I can see a whole lot of thank you. So Trishen, we are saying thank you so much from the NLF team, from the attendees. We are saying thank you so much for gracing us with your time. Colleagues, thank you so much. Have yourself a blessed Thursday. See you tomorrow. If you feel you have learned from this, please invite your colleagues, invite your friends, so they can also partake of the knowledge on this platform. Have yourself a blessed Thursday. See you same time tomorrow, same platform, same time, and we are all going to be listening to Trishen. Over to you, Musa. Thank you so much.
I think to add after that, except to Trishen said he's honored, but really the honor is all ours to collaborate with him and continue this webinar. I think I'll end with the last words. Many thanks coming in, as IK said, but this one's from Dombi Ziningi Shang, and they said very useful and relevant information. However, we did suffer from technical difficulties due to our network failure. Will there be resources available for this webinar? I don't mind repeating again, ladies and gentlemen, you will be getting this recording and along with the questions and answers put in paper, along with the slides that we spoke to today. And if you came in late and you can't wait for tomorrow, or you're not available for the session tomorrow, remember, we still have our on-demand, very similar to DSTV catch-up. The link that you use to register, if you click it after 2 o'clock, you'll be taken to a recording of the session. But the difference is that it's almost live because your attendance will be taken, and you can use that attendance as evidence should you need to. Well, with that, nothing else to say, colleagues, but have a wonderful day. God bless you and God bless South Africa. And we'll talk soon.